consistencies in your paint. So my sky is going to be fairly light. I'm still thinking of this shape. I haven't gotten to my shape yet. I'm just trying to put a little warmth in this sky. So I've got raw sienna and kind of a permanent rose thing happening here. A lot of times on a landscape, I will give myself a little bit of top and bottom, and I will find out if I need to move it up or down. And I'm not one that says you can't crop after the fact. There was one teacher that said, "Oh, that's a cop out. You can't do that." And it's like, well, you can do anything. If you only got 4 inches at work on a painting on that painting. Okay, so I'm trying not to do what I always tell people is rush it too much. So I've got a very simple, soft, little kind of golden colored sky. I'm watching the sheen on the paper. And, you know, it still ripples, even though it's fairly thick paper. I didn't stretch it, I just taped it down. And the high parts are going to dry, and the low parts are going to collect water. I want to paint this shape. I want to paint this shape so fast and so fresh and so direct, and I want to have a couple colors mix on the paper. I'm going to drop down just a little bit of water here. I don't want this whole hillside to bloom up into my sky. Some of these little posts, oh, my little masking. When I first started painting, like a lot of beginners do, I use a lot of masking. And I'm going to try to show you how masking can be, people love it or hate it. And I want to try to show you how you can paint. You have to be a negative painter. Negative shapes are where it's all about. You got to learn how to paint around things. Okay, I'm just losing my sheen there, and I've got a little bit of brown matter. I want to see what my top edge is going to look like up there. I've got this square brush in my hand because I like to paint a little around some architecture with a square brush, and I'm going to also try to paint around something. I'm working fairly rapidly because I want things to mix on the paper. And I'm thinking about this one big, giant, wonderful shape. So I've got some houses kind of coming up on the hill. There's a couple little palm trees sticking out. And I've got to work faster. That's why it's kind of good to start small and until you can kind of get a sense of tempo. And there's some of these little bits of architecture up there. Okay, usually I paint the warm color down first. When I paint trees or anything, I like to put an underpainting of the opposite color. I use a lot of burnt sienna. So I want to try to get some nice sap green and some ultramarine blue juicing over the top of that because it really was so green down there. So I'm going to just kind of, I'm going to put some, and I'm really hoping that this turns out good. I mean, I'm like you know, I want to get in and go real crazy, but still, my biggest fear is to be tentative when I paint in front of a group. So that's all I'm thinking about is don't be tentative. I would rather it kind of fall apart and fail and be expressive. I'd rather have an expressive failure than... So, let's see if I can just kind of... I like a little of that salmon color. I don't know about that big bloom up there, but I guess the mountain was a little bit taller right there than I remembered. And to let the color mix on the paper, and I really haven't really looked at the, I want to have just a little bit of geometry. That's the thing that I think is so beautiful in a picture, is you create contrast. You create value contrast, and you create intensity contrast, and you can also create contrast just like organic versus geometric. And it's these little unbalanced contrasts. So essentially what I did is I put green blue over the top of salmon. And some parts of it turned out the way I'd hoped, and some parts were like, whoa, what happened? But I like some of the things that are happening. Okay, now I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to keep going fairly fast, and I'm going to kind of work right down the line. I don't want to put too much detail in my big shape, because then I'd be going against what I told you not to do. But I would like to try to connect. So I look at my picture, and I see there's this wonderful shadow on the bottom of the boat right there. There's a neat little, cool little sail. I think when beginners take masking fluid and mask out these white boats, they're masking out this positive shape. It's so much more exciting when you paint negative shapes. And I'll show you when I use a bunch of masking how I'm doing just the opposite of what people do. So I have created an exciting bottom line. So here's the shape that I was talking about. And I don't have a whole lot of detail in it. Sometimes I love these carpenter's pencils, and sometimes I just can move a little bit of, without going too crazy. But this is a really exciting top edge to them. Okay, I'm going to just come on down the line. I've got a post sticking up into it. This is really neat. That bloomed up more than I wanted, but people always want to know, how do you fix things? How do you fix things? You really have to weigh out if it's worth fixing. A lot of times people fix things and destroy freshness. And that's a hard thing to want to know how to do. Okay, so I'm going to bring some water in. I'm going to just start by laying in a little bit of clear water. And oftentimes I wreck my paintings. I goof up the foregrounds. I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly what my problem is, but a lot of times I crop off the bottoms of my paintings. And I'm supposed to be the guy that should know the answer, and I think sometimes I get it and sometimes I don't. So. Okay, I'm going to try to make this water fairly simple. I always give the analogy of a symphony. There's all these incredible instruments in a symphony, and every one of them can play a wonderful solo, but if they all play a solo at once, then it just sounds like it's no good. So I went with this cobalt turquoise, which is a really pretty color, but it's kind of chalky. It's a little opaque, and it's dead on the right color of the water down there, but it doesn't blend as much as some of the little stainers. So I'm taking this square brush and I'm kind of dancing it around on its points. I've liked square brushes, and I'm painting more with round now, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm painting this next shape, and because I'm different from up here, I have an easy chance that I could lose harmony. And so I have to absolutely get some of that color that's up above in this foreground. Whether it's a little bit of this raw sienna or something. I've got to tie that. I always put a little bit of sky in my water and a little water on my sky, just to kind of get yourself tied together. Maybe it would be nice to look at my picture for just a second, see what reality looks like. I really want to have a big brush in my hands as long as I can. Oftentimes I never use a detail brush. It's the people that want to, I go into the nursing homes and paint twice a month, and man, they want to get that detail brush right away and get going, and I'm like, oh, paint with the bigger brush, please, just for a little bit. And I like this little bloop that comes down there. It ties my shapes together. Like I said earlier, you don't want to have everything look like it's cut out, it's outlined. People will be able to see that that's shore and water. Okay, I'm getting close to the end here. I'm not getting close to the end, but I'm getting close to a stopping point. I think it's really hard to paint a painting all at the same time. Just what it needs. I love that background there where you can't hardly tell what it is. The more things you can tell that you can't tell what they are, then people won't know, and then they'll say, well, it must have looked like what you were thinking. Okay, so this is going to be my stopping point on this one, and I'll have to evaluate here a little bit, see if I want to get, I think I want to put just a little plume of, a little bit of this orangish down here. Just keep that going here before I stop, just to kind of get a little shore down there. So that's where I'm gonna go on that one. I love this kind of purpley coral kind of sky. It's kind of a bird coming through there. So I've kind of got the nuts and bolts to it. I've got my one shape. I always do what I tell you guys not to do. I still get away from putting too much detail on the shape, but the trick is you have to watch out putting too many light shapes in your shadow shapes and too many dark shapes in your dark details in your highlight shapes. Okay, I'm going to put this on the side and rest, and let's take a break right now, and then what I'm going to show you, I'll just tease you for the second one. This other style, this is the style that I do plein air. I paint real fast like this, and I usually paint in about an hour and a half on a plein air piece. But these other pieces that are more stylized, pretty light, I'm not going to monkey too much with the water. I think I'm going to try to get a couple nice just brush strokes down here on this beach, and then just throw in a little detail, and then almost call it done. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get just a... color. think about when you're making stew or you're putting on jewelry or whatever, you don't put everything you've got, you just want to just do a little.
Maybe.
I read that in a book somewhere. And then on these little houses, the colors of these houses were so neat.
Where in Puerto Rico were you?
We were way up, we were about an hour straight east of San Juan, so we were way up in the northeastern part of the little rectangle. And I would love to remix that color back here. Change that. All right, even that is cool. I always think, do I dare do that one last stroke? It's probably going to ruin it. All right, I'll be done. So I started to kind of think about laying masking down, and I really like woodcuts. And when you do a linoleum block print or a woodcut, you're removing everything that you don't want printed. You're scooping it out, and you leave little pieces that are raised that take the ink and you make your print. If you've done batik, you paint wax on the material. Everything you paint wax on is going to not take the ink, and the spaces between the wax will take the ink. So woodcuts and batiks have this kind of stained glass window kind of a look. And that's what I'm getting in these more stylized pieces. I'm kind of bored with trying to create something that looks realistic. I'm having so much more fun showing my interpretation, this stylized method. So what I do is, whether you're doing a batik and painting wax, whether you're doing a woodcut and removing wood, I am not going to paint it, but I get my masking fluid, and if it's solid and it's sat on the shelf at the store, it's a disaster. I pour about a quarter of a bottle into a cup, and I take my brush, and I have used the same brush for about 20 paintings, 50 paintings. You have to get the brush wet. You've got to take soft soap, liquid soap. Don't use a bar. I know everybody wants to argue, well, I have a little bar of soap. Get your brush really wet and really grind that liquid soap into your brush. Take the excess soap out, and then I dip my brush into this masking fluid, and I pretend like I'm removing wood on a woodcut. Now, obviously, I'm not doing that, but I'm painting strokes. So what I've got here is I've got kind of a shore of a Boundary Waters thing. I've got some down. And so if you try to do this style, you really have to let the acrylic, now this is acrylic paint on here. So what I do is I come through on the first pass with acrylic paint. If I have a green tree, I paint red. If I want a blue robin's egg, I paint orange. I always paint the opposite color in acrylic down.